Hello everybody, this is Rise of Nations, here to talk about the Company Heroes 2 December update that's coming on later on today. There is a few things that are going to be talked about in this. It's the OKW revamp, the balance changes, the commanders, and any bug fixes, pathfinding issues. And so the OKW have now been revamped to actually now, instead of 66%, they now get 100% resources. Their fuel has been decreased to 10, and their starting manpower was brought up from 240 to 340. So now the buildable units in each headquarters. The command headquarters can build the Volks, the Stern Pioneers, the Kuba Wagon, the Raketenwerfer rocket launcher, and now the supply half track you can build for 100 manpower and 15 fuel instead of having to wait for it when it gets destroyed. The battle group headquarters, which is the medical headquarters, the fuel has been brought down from 40 to 25, and the buildable units would be the support gun, the half track with infrared, and the flak half track. The mechanized fuel cost was increased from 40 to 50. The munitions and the fuel transfer have been removed, and the buildable units are the Lux, the Puma, and the Stuka. The last building, the Panzer headquarters, the fuel cost was increased from 80 to 105, and the buildable units, the Obersoldaten, the Jagdpanzer IV, the Panzer IV, and the Panther. From this, you could see a lot of changes. Stuff was moved around. The flak half track was moved from the mechanized. The Lux was moved from the Panzer headquarters, and the Jagdpanzer was moved to the battle group. They've been trying to, what looks like, move around things to change the gameplay up a little bit rather than having it the same. Usually, most of the time, everybody in the OKW has always been building the battle group headquarters over and over and over again, and immediately as early get the Jagdpanzer IV, kind of denying a lot of medium tanks. The Lux was moved because by the time you get to the Panzer HQ, unless the enemy was so late in their tanks, you really won't buy it because you would be so late with your lessened fuel. Other than that, a lot of the stuff has been moved around. We'll have to see how useful it may be. But the problem I see is between the Jagdpanzer and the Panzer IV. The Jagdpanzer and the Panzer IV both have the same amount of fuel, 135, but the Jagdpanzer is slightly more expensive in manpower, being 400, and the Panzer being 350 if I was not mistaken. So most of the time, by the time you reach 135 fuel, you're going to get a Panzer IV. The Jagdpanzer is only good against vehicles. That's it. It can't at least take on any kind of vehicle, infantry or anything along those lines. So basically, if you bought it and all there is infantry, you basically wasted and just 135 fuel down the drain until they get a tank out. At least the Panzer IV is a generalist, so it can deal with both. It has a machine gun on top, it has the gun with the good AoE, it has the whole machine gun, it has the turret machine gun, so it can deal with infantry. The Jagdpanzer, I think, needs some kind of machine gun. Just put a whole machine gun, or just put a machine gun upgradable on top, so it can at least deal with infantry. It might not be able to kill them, but it can at least deter them a little bit. Other than that, we'll have to see how this looks. It looks very interesting, personally, and we'll see where this actually goes. There was a lot of unit changes, like the Volksgrenadier, for example, have been brought up from 235 to 250 manpower. They brought up their damage from 10 to 12, and for a lot of their units, they changed a lot of the veterancy 4 and 5 ranks, because as they explained it, it was doing too much damage. Once you get like a veterancy 5, let's see, Obersoldaten or Volksmanjäger or whatever, they would just chew through anything, including veterancy 3 units. What they did was they toned down some of the damage, so if you get units of veterancy 5, it's an advantage, but it's not going to be like you got this Obersoldaten with freaking laser rifle at this point running around, just gunning down everything that's in its path. It's actually not that bad, so that means they can face you. You get rewarded for getting them there, but it's not like you can just destroy everything before you now. Next is the infantry support gun. They took out the suppression. It can now auto face, and the usual veteran C5 and stuff like that they changed a little bit. And the garrison cover they brought up a little bit, so that means it's more useful at hitting at buildings, so you can barrage a building now. Next we have the Kubel wagon. Well, from the looks of it, they added the capture rate, they took out the suppression, they brought down its range a bit, they brought down the amount of cost up to 210 manpower from 240 manpower to 5 fuel, and they increased the overall armor around the entire vehicle to 4.5. That's good, it can do some harassing, but that's all it is. It can't really do anything more than that. They might need to bring up the damage a little bit. I don't care if they bring up the cost a tiny bit to 240, but bring up the damage a little bit so it can actually be a little bit more of a menace. Not something that'll be destroying everything, but it's something that could be a nice menace to the enemy rather than just something that just annoys them by backcapping. Next we have the Panzer II Luke's tank. They brought up the fuel to 65, and strangely enough, they brought down the penetration down to 20. I'm kind of curious about that because it's not exactly going to penetrate any tanks. A T-70 can actually beat it one-on-one since the T-70 has a little bit more penetrating power. So I don't understand why they brought that down. That, and I'm wondering about the fuel because you're already paying 50 fuel for the mechanized, and now you're going to pay another 65, which is 115 fuel for this tank. They have the thing is, I can understand they make sure that it doesn't come too early, but it should come about the average time that a T-70 or Stuart would usually come out. Not without any doctrines or anything, just the average time with having one fuel point, maybe half the map or something like that. So if it comes too late, you're not going to build it. If it comes too early, it's going to dominate too easily, and they're going to have to do some tweaks about that. Somewhere around the lines where it can come out about where the T-70 and Stuart comes out, so it can be a nice unit. The next one is the Flampanzer Hetzer. If you noticed, if anyone's used it, it takes forever to veterancy up. They majorly decreased the requirement, so it means it can get to those veterancies a lot faster. Is it going to be that much faster? No, depending on the unit and the veterancy, but it's not going to be like you're going to be killing at least like 40 troops of non-veteran before you can even hit Vet 1. So they brought that down. The Tiger B now, the King Tiger, it's now an unlockable calling unit. How this works is you build all 3 trucks, and where your commander is, whether you selected him or not, will pop up the Tiger tank. All you need to do is get the manpower and fuel, and you can call it right in. That's basically what happens. It's basically a non-doctrinal call-in. So the minute you build all 3 buildings, it appears at the bottom, and you're limited to 1 to make all the heavy call-ins like that. And what they did was they brought down the population a little bit, and they buffed up the last veterancy 5 reload by a small amount. Also, they changed Panzerschrecks a little bit and made them less likely to actually snipe units. I've gotten that more from bazookas, personally, than the Panzerschreck, but this is a very good change, so you can't just mass Panzerschrecks and just snipe infantry at times what might happen. Well, on to the Wehrmacht. Well, by the looks of it, they didn't really get any major changes. The only thing that's really changed was the way their units, their air support works, and some of their commanders. Elite troops now, they decided to replace the elite troops ability that gives you the veterancy for the fuel and manpower for a stormtrooper's call-in. Now that's lost the ability, but what they're trying to do, what I see, is they're trying to not interfere with the general pacing of veterancy, so you get a free veterancy 3 squad. Well, not free exactly, just you pay for it, but they want to make sure everyone's like on a probably leveled playing field on the in terms of veterancy. The close air support and the Osttruppen, the redistribute resource has actually been replaced with the supply drop zone. So you can no longer just trade 50 fuel for 125 munitions off the bat. Now you have a supply drop zone which flies over this certain area, which they balanced it, they changed it as well to having it fly from the furthest point so the allies can actually shoot it down. So what you do is, if anyone's played the Luftwaffe supply doctrine, what it does is for 200 manpower, for 50 fuel, 50 fuel drop, or 100 munitions drop, if I'm not mistaken, they fly over the target and drop on only the munitions or the fuel point, whichever one you choose. If you choose the fuel, drops fuel, flies over munitions, drops the munitions. So this was to prevent from just easy click, you got the fuel, you got the munitions, or click, you just get that for free very quickly. There's no punishment for it. There's no way to counter it. It's just you get it how many times. The only thing that it does is it prevents you from getting your armor and stuff out, but at the same time, with that much munitions, you can basically drop mines all over the place. You can get your Panzer Grenadiers with all the Panzer Shreks that you can think of. 2 Grenadiers instantly with LMGs. You can get a lot of airstrikes from the close air, and so on and so forth. So they just wanted to change that a little bit. By the looks of it, they also changed the air supports. Well, all the air supports overall. Like the Stuka close air support and the strafing runs. They make sure they specifically target what they're supposed to. Like the Stuka close air support ability is going to target the vehicles only, and the strafing runs are only going to target the infantry. They brought down the sight to 0 for the loiters, so they can't just see themselves in strafe. So basically, you can't just call it in, retreat, leave, and then that's it. You actually have to have somebody still sighting for the planes now. So that changes things. Then just drop, call in, and there you go. Especially for the U.S. and the UK forces and the Soviets, that you can just drop a lot of your stuff and then ignore it, and then it will sight for itself and deal with it. The Osttruppen reserves from the mobile defense doctrine, if anyone has it, it no longer provides a random veterancy on the unit. I say that's okay, but now it's either going to happen like this. It's either just going to be the Osttruppen or the Osttruppen with a possible machine gun. I think since they dropped the veterancy, why not give them a chance to have a Panzerschreck? One of them have Panzerschreck. Either they get nothing, they get a machine gun, or they get a Panzerschreck, since they lost their ability to get that free veterancy. It's not going to change anything. It's only be one guy with the Panzerschreck, and you're still basically paying for random chance. It's not too bad, I would think. But that's just my thoughts. And another one, the Jaeger Light Infantry upgrade. That is my personal favorite. I always like putting my Grenadiers with those Jaeger packages whenever I can. I never had, I always had to wait till 3, especially when I went Lightning War and stuff. Now it's been reduced from 3 CPs to 1. So that means they come out just as fast as the LMG-42. So now I can use that munitions rather than just stockpiling it, waiting. Now I can just get it and start using it early and being aggressive with it. That's really good. I enjoyed that a lot. Well, we have the U.S. forces. Mostly the commander change was their rifle company. From what they put, is it was too much of rifleman spam, and then you get all of them with flamethrowers, and then you can't get into a building or anything. It was just a little too easy of access just to spam those riflemen and just put flamethrowers. You just dominate half the time. So what they did now was they changed the flamethrower to the rear echelon squads now. Now they hold on to the flamethrowers, the riflemen don't get it. So they brought down the CP to 0, so the rear echelons, as soon as you get the 60 munitions, you can call one up and use the rear esh as your garrison clearer, and since they got the flamethrower, they're a little more anti-infantry, so they can actually be a little more useful. The elite rifleman was replaced with a fire-up ability. So basically squads move at maximum speed like an URA charge, and after a certain amount of time, they slow down due to exhaustion. So from the looks of it, I think this is a a unit-wide kind of thing. So multiple units get it, almost like the motherland from the Soviets, except you don't get any benefits except just being able to run. So it's kind of a UA charge overall with an exhaustion debuff. So you have to be aggressive and then make sure you actually were able to do your job. If you're not, you're gonna have a harder time if they were able to hold, since they can hit a lot of your troops that are moving slower. So most of the changes they did was also the rear echelons. They brought them up in manpower from 160 to 200 and brought up their carbines from 8 to 10 damage. The riflemen, they changed the veteran C3 requirement up a little bit, since from the veteran C3 they get a huge accuracy modifier against them goes lower, so it makes it harder for them to hit. So they probably brought it up just to make it a little, since they scale well later on with the veteran C3, since they can survive more. We got the pack howitzer, the suppressions removed, they can auto face, and the garrison cover has been brought up by a small amount. The M10 Wolverine tank destroyer, they brought up the cost a little bit, from 270 manpower and 80 fuel to 390. From what I look about it is, it's just a little bit more expensive than a Stug. Some people complain about it. Me, I use it, but not like some people use it like a large amount. I use it here and there, so this is basically me paying for a slightly more expensive Stug and cost of manpower. Other than that, that's it. There was no changes to them except the increased cost. The bazookas, the weapon accuracy has been increased. Hallelujah. I've had so many times where I had my bazooka firing point blank and missing. While I've seen Panzerschrecks, when I had Panzerschrecks, I would like home in on the target and just get them around the corner somehow. So this is a welcome change that they're a little bit more accurate, because I got really frustrated when my bazookas weren't hitting. It's bad enough not penetrating, but it's worse knowing that it's just point blank and you just hit the ground or completely miss. Next on the list, we have the UK forces. From the field headquarters, which is the main building, they brought up the bolster infantry squad to about just under the cost of buying the first tier building, just 30 manpower cheaper. Well, it did, I could understand they did do a lot, because it increased the DPS with that extra guy and increased survivability by a lot. So I can understand the increased cost. They added emplacements now, can no longer be abandoned. I liked the idea of it being abandoned because it's a risk reward, especially putting on the front lines. Now it feels like the emplacements have a buff to make them a little harder to destroy, but at the same time now it's going to make it even harder for the Wehrmacht and the OKW to kind of hit it, because now you can put stuff more on the front lines and it can survive a little better, and you don't have to worry about being abandoned and then taken. I've had games where I've stolen the Bofors gun, which was great. I just abandoned it, stole it, repaired it, and now they have to deal with it. That was their punishment for putting it deep in the front lines. Now it doesn't feel as punishing, but I could see it doesn't make it as bad, since the cooldown for brace is not that big, but still, by the time the first brace happens, it might have enough time to get the second brace just before it dies and push away. So I'm a little mixed, but we'll see how it looks. The strafings, as usual, are just make sure, like the strafing support, make sure the rockets target vehicles and the strafing runs target infantry. The infantry section have been changed to make them better outside of cover, and a little bit dumb down their performance a little bit in cover. So it doesn't mean that out of cover they'd be able to be great. It just means that out of cover they can do a little bit better, while in cover they're still pretty good. The Royal Engineers, the one thing that changed was the appropriate cost for the heavy engineer ability. The heavy engineers, the ones where You get the Vickers and the faster repair time. I think it makes sense putting a cost under it because you got the Vickers K, which means you can still put two Bren guns, it doesn't take a slot. They have fast repair and they have higher armor. And if they have Veteran C1, they can hide behind cover and they will just destroy anything that comes at them. Yeah, they might not be able to dodge things very well, but that 2 armor really does help unless it's a flamethrower. So I could see the cost behind it, so it's not so overbearing that you can get 3 engineers, get them to heavy engineers, and there you go. So it's to make sure it's costs something to actually be a huge benefit now. The 50 caliber sniper, they changed the sniper a lot. They changed coordinated fire from Veteran C1 to be an ability that you can use immediately, and the critical shot to Veteran C1. From what I see is what they wanted to do is make sure the vehicles can actually chase them down and stuff like a scout car or something before it hits Veteran C1. Before a scout car or some kind of vehicle appears, bang, you destroyed or damaged the engine. Now they can't move and chase you down. So basically, it just encourages the light vehicle play in the beginning. So you can actually counter the sniper until it hits Veteran C1, then you're going to have a little bit more of a tough time when it can just do the critical shots and stuff like that. The Churchill Crocodile, that has been changed majorly. So the flamethrower range was reduced to 25. They changed command point to 13 for other heavy tanks. And they brought it to the cost of a Tiger, which was 640 manpower and 230 fuel. And they also brought up the veterancy requirements, which I personally think was needed. That thing can not only destroy infantry, it was able to defend itself against heavy tanks. It's not like a KV-8 or anything like that only has the flamethrower. So I can see why they brought up the veterancy a little bit higher. Next is the 6-pounder. They brought up the manpower a bit to make some more sense because 280 for that kind of gun was pretty cheap, so it can stop light vehicles and stuff like that, and it wasn't very punishing. You can buy that thing. I would sometimes I would go, oh, I need an AT gun. I can buy it real quick, and then be able to get other stuff rather than like the Soviets, the Americans, and so forth that paid the 320 for their AT gun that does pretty much very well as a 6-pounder, especially the Pac 40. The next is the Valentine tank, the tank that I personally never cared about. They brought it down the command points from 8 to 6, which means it comes out about the same time as a Puma. The unit just didn't really work for me. It's a light tank that costs a lot and was kind of there. And when it was in later on, when you got 8 and then you had to get a Sexton at 9, how are you supposed to get that Veteran C1 in that short amount of time? Now it's a little easier, but that commander needs to be looked at a little bit since the overcharge rounds are only good on Sextons, and the Sextons are already meh. But they have to look at that probably another time. For the Soviets, there's not much. They changed the KV-2 to be a little bit more health, a little bit cheaper in population, and with the huge change to Soviet industry, which means no Soviet industry, it's just an airdrop, it's a better, higher chance of getting the KV-2 out, and you don't bleed out as easily. And there's really nothing else about them that they put. They just majorly changed the strafings a bit and the commander. That's it, nothing really else. The bug fixes in this game are mostly just like minor switch things here and there, make sure there's certain sound effects and stuff like that. There were certain things that, like, for example, the Storm Tiger's reload buff wouldn't happen. The most annoying thing that is great is no more Allied Rain Dance, with the guard rifles and the captains no longer shuffle around before they actually start to fire. Or after they start firing, they're just shuffling back and forth, wasting time and getting themselves shot when sometimes you have that one shot that you have to do and they just don't do it. There was also, I noticed there was an issue that I thank God they fixed, is They combat the Firefly and catch the 17 pounder. I would notice that the shot would hit, the enemy tank would move as if it got hit and would take no damage. So they fixed that. And there's only like certain lines, some sounds, and etc. And also they did some tweaking of their maps. Next are the two new commanders that are coming out with this update. The Tactical Support Company from the Americans, and the OKW with their Overwatch doctrine. For the tactical support, it's mostly the abilities of the M19 light machine gun, the P47 recon run, the M5 half track, a P47 strafing run similar to the strafing runs from the close air support, just comes in, strafes, and there we go, and the M4 Sherman Calliope. So you basically, the one new thing in here is the rocket launcher tank and the strafing run, which is just a straight strafing run. Everything else has been in other commanders or has been used in like abilities. The next one up is Overwatch doctrine from the OKW. From all of this relies on a lot of knowing where the enemy position is, so either you'll be able to expect an attack, or you can plan your attack to ambush them and surprise them. The first thing you get is a Goliath, which is that explosive little tank from Company Heroes 1. You just drive it around, hide it, and then just blow it up. The second one is the forward receivers. All the supply half trucks are deployed with automatic forward receivers, so they can see through the fog of war to a certain range. I think it was a 40 range from around the truck, so that means you can put it against a hedgerow or something and see what's going on the other side. The early warnings is once you get to that point, every single point you capture has a flare. So the minute any enemy, except if they have a mine detector, will launch flares in the air so you can see what's going on. The next thing would be for the Fatherland, backdrop from Vico again, is the infantry get for 30 seconds a defensive buff. So they get faster movement speed and they get a better defensive buff. And Sector Assault is just Stuka's basically reconning and strafing the area for the time. Last but not least is the major thing that I liked was the pathfinding fix. Finally, for the longest time I had such an annoyance with my vehicles not falling back when I tell the U back. They're like, should I go left? Should I turn right? Should I turn around? I don't know what to do, and boom, they're gone. There are times that I mess up but there are other infuriating times where the pathfinding, when you click behind and I'm clicking U as fast as possible behind it, that the tank just pivots so many times before it actually thinks that it's supposed to go. It stops for a second trying to wonder what's going on. So now you can click behind the tank to a certain distance and it retreats without it turning around and then going off. Or you can just click the U as usual. So it's faster with the click, and then for far range from across the map you just press the U button. So it makes this a lot easier. So for me, I'm not going to be losing as many tanks as I used to, which was pretty ridiculous. But other than that, that's really it, guys. Like if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more. Have a good one, guys.